All right, it's time for us to get into a guest we have on the show right now. And someone that I have actually gone a long way back and have known him for over like 15, 20 years. And now he and his family are actually in Australia. It's coming down to Sri Lanka right now and about to launch something really exciting and really new. We're going to be talking about that. We'll come back right after this break. Welcome back to the show, and yes, as always on Good Night Sri Lanka, we always have a guest edition where we bring in somebody on the show talking about some really interesting stuff and find out what's actually going on as far as Sri Lankans who not necessarily only live in Sri Lanka, like Gavin, who's our guest on the show today, of course, lives in Australia. Gavin and I actually go a very, very long way back. Too long, Gavin?
Yes.
way too. He's embarrassed to he's embarrassed to admit also how long that we go back, but we do. So Gavin's actually with his family in Australia. Gavin is basically in Sri Lanka for a very, very special reason, and we're going to get into all those details as we move on. Gav, firstly, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Pleasure, and thank you very much for having me. It was surprising for me to know that you had left radio, but it was about time.
Thank you. So that's all we have time for the interview today.
That's the statement of the year.
Yeah, so thank you very much for watching.
No, it's a pleasure, and look, let's talk about the excitement and the products and the brand that we're talking about later on. But I've seen you on air so many times, and I was like, God bless the people who actually put their money behind it.
But Gav, you've moved to Australia. How's life in Australia?
Life is good. It's like a little Sri Lanka.
Yeah, obviously.
So you're in Canberra?
No, in Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Okay.
In Melbourne.
Okay.
However much you want to get away from Sri Lankans, you can't.
Right.
The biggest population out of Sri Lanka, and where I live, I think 90% of them are in that area.
Oh, really?
And look, if you want Sri Lankan food, there are about 50 Sri Lankan shops to choose from. You don't need to cook anything. From Chinese rolls to pol sambal, you can find it.
Right.
So no, look, it's good. Australia is good. No place like Sri Lanka.
For sure.
For sure. Every now and then you get homesick and say, you know what, let's go to Sri Lanka.
Right.
And then reality hits. You look at few things, and it's good. Life is good, but you have moments where you feel homesick.
Yeah,
It's pretty darn cool these days, I guess.
Yeah. So when I left in the morning, it was about 2 degrees.
Oh,
Wow.
And it warms up to about 12 degrees. That's t-shirt weather.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
That's not bad.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
That's not bad.
No, but overall, Australia is good. I think a lot of people call it a second home.
Right.
And I think there are 250,000 Sri Lankans living in Australia.
And counting.
And counting. Look, we met up a couple of days ago. So the St. Thomas's rugby teams of 1999 to 2004 met at CR.
Right.
So technically, you take about 20 people per team. You're looking at about 80 people, 80 players, or
Right.
60 players.
Right.
Guess how many turned up?
But 60, 70?
15.
15?
Everyone else has
Gone to Australia?
Not Australia, the country. It's sad.
Right.
It's sad that there's such a big brain drain from Sri
Oh,
Lanka.
for sure.
But
We are the only brains left.
God bless Sri Lanka.
Can you see? That's why he's saying it's sad.
And they should call you for that outing.
If at all we fall to that category.
Yeah, the sad category.
Look, in all fairness, the only hope is that yes, we have people who have gone and experienced the outside world, and they've got that I would say a fourth dimension in terms of their thinking and their exposure. At some day, let's hope that brains and that type of experience comes back to Sri Lanka to take it to the next level.
Right, right.
Coming from a sports point of view, I was involved in rugby at the SLRFU, taking teams to Hong Kong. I played rugby in Hong Kong as well for a couple of years.
Right.
I've gone with the Sri Lanka team to the Hong Kong Sevens. I have been in other different sports arenas, the biggest problem Sri Lankans have is exposure. So you can't get confidence if you're not exposed. Even in business. Luckily, I worked at MAs and did a lot of international business, and we got that exposure. But the biggest problem why we can't develop is that thinking pattern. We are just one track minded. We have tunnel vision.
Frog in a well.
Frog in a well, and the more exposure you get, the more confident you build.
Right.
As well as you start thinking out of the box.
Right.
So if you look at technology per se, the epitome of technology is if you can invent something and patent it. How many patents does Sri Lanka have compared to European countries or American countries? So that's where we need to look at in terms of our thinking. And the more exposure you have, look, yes, it's great to have so many people living outside. But yeah, bring what your experience, etc., and just share it with the country as well.
Yeah.
So that the next generation who's coming up will not have to leave the country,
Yeah.
but can invent something or develop something that will sustain Sri Lanka and grow the GDP, etc., and so that we can get some foreign exchange and investment.
Yep. Gavin, of course, actually captained St. Thomas's Mount Lavinia rugby team back in the year 2000. He was heavily involved in rugby. Now Gavin's actually shifted focus from one sport to another, and you've actually moved into sharpshooting. And you were also part of the high performance team for Sri Lanka, representing Paris Olympics. Talk us through that.
So, Shaq, I come from a long line of shooters. My great-grandfather, grandfather, my dad and I, we always look hunting, fishing, camping, outdoor. You don't learn to shoot in Sunday school.
Right.
You're not in the Gaza Strip.
And I remember how many times you obviously wanted to go fishing.
Yes,
Said, oh my God, every Sunday, Shaq, you're coming. No.
Yeah, Shaq fishing? Yeah, no.
I think I started shooting an air rifle before I could pass rugby ball.
Right.
So I grew up with firearms, and it's nothing new.
Okay.
It's just that rugby took a big part of my life growing up. When I was 13, I was 100 kilos.
Yeah.
Right, so naturally I was just put it out. Now I'm 104, so you can imagine how big I was when I was 13. Obviously had the skill, had the passion, continued it. I still shot, but again at that time Sri Lanka was going through a civil war for 30 years.
Right.
So we had NATO arms embargoes, we couldn't get proper guns, we were still shooting with our great-grandfather's guns, we didn't have ammunition. There was a lot of things to encourage shooting, but saying that, we had shooters like Lucky Rajasinghe, Pushpamali Ramanayaka, Zal Chitti, so many shooters who represented Sri Lanka in the Olympics, but that was only in few categories like rifle and pistol, because most of these people were military marksmen,
Right.
and they had the time, they were hired to do that. So, which was good. But trap shooting, which I do, is like the Formula One of shooting, and it's every time you squeeze the trigger, it's about 500 rupees.
Wow.
So it's not shooting like shooting lead pellets and putting air to propel it.
Right.
These are proper. A gun is about $20,000. Every time you go to a World Cup, you're down about $10,000. For the last 10 years, I've been doing this. 12 years, I've been doing it. If I didn't, I could have bought another house.
Oh, really?
And that's what it is,
Right.
Yes, I played rugby till about the age of 30. What do you do to old horses that don't race? Put a bullet in their head and that's it.
You put them down.
Exactly.
Don't look
So
at me.
when you grow up from a young age, I started playing rugby when I was about 8-9 years old. I played first 15 when I was 15 years old.
Right.
So when you are involved in such a competitive environment, and when you are involved in competitive sports all your life, you need to have something to keep going. You just can't, you can't stop. So in 2010-11, I won the national championship here in play target, and I was like, what's next? Do you stop here, or do you get stuck in this, or do you expand your horizons? So looked at everything. My wife is an accountant, and we just said Australia, because it ticked all the boxes: rugby, cricket, hunting, fishing, camping, shooting. USA. Now England, no. So Australia ticked all the boxes. And then moved there with a purpose. Obviously, the lifestyle was good.
Yeah.
I was one of the lucky people who went there with a job.
Oh, okay.
So after working at MAS for almost 15 years, I went and told my boss in England that I'm leaving, and one of the guys in the office said, "Oh, there's this Australian guy coming tomorrow for a meeting. Do you guys want to meet?" Met him, and he gave me a job.
Oh, yeah.
So
Lucky.
Luckily, there's someone upstairs looking at us.
Yeah.
Most of the guys struggled to get their first job, but I was one of those lucky people who went in with a job. And so when there, didn't know anything about. Well, that's the other thing which I say, lack of exposure.
Mm.
Whether it's rugby or any sport or anything, you think you know everything when you're in Sri Lanka. Pote, Gura, we know everything. Don't worry, we don't need any help. When you go somewhere else, you look at new techniques, new things that they do, and you just look like an idiot.
Mm.
So I went to the gun club because I had to train, etc. Just want to just find my way.
Yeah.
And there's this Chinese guy teaching all of these young kids. I'm like, who the hell is this chap? Right? And I had borrowed a gun from the club. He said, "There's one spot, come and shoot," because there are 6 shooters in a squad. I shot, and then I had already ordered my gun because there are procedures to get a firearm. So
Right.
you get a police check, etc. And the gun dealership came and said, "Look, your gun's ready. You got to go to Beretta and get your measurement because it's a custom-made gun." So I go, and this same Chinese guy who I met the previous day opens the door and says, "Come." Then only I realized that he was for 14 years Australia's national coach, who's got 7 Olympic medals under his belt.
Wow.
4 gold, 1 silver and 2 bronze. I was like,
Right.
thank God I did not say anything offensive. I
It wasn't very racist there.
no, I'm like, I tell that to him all the time.
Right.
And his name is Greg Chan. He's with me at the moment.
Right.
So he works for a company called Beretta. So Beretta is, I believe, the oldest company in the world. Started in 1526.
Wow.
Come down 15 generations, and the 15th generation and the 16th generation is currently handling it.
Right.
So look, they've been making beautiful guns. If you look at some of the guns they use, a lot of people have this thing, oh, it's a gun, it's a firearm, oh, it's dangerous. But if you look at the workmanship and the craftsmanship that goes into it, hand engraved, etc. So it's beautiful. It's like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. The technology and the workmanship is just absolutely crazy. So at the Paris Games, in the shotgun category, there were 15 medals on offer. Beretta won 14 of those 15.
Wow.
And there's a slogan saying nobody is perfect because they lost one. And it was a bronze. And that shooter was a Beretta shooter. She migrated to another brand. So
Right.
if she stayed on, it would have been 15 out of 15. So with that, lot of shooters have been using Berettas in Sri Lanka, but we haven't had a proper agent. So because of my ties with Beretta, because I'm a part sponsored shooter by them as well,
Okay.
I said, look, let's promote it because Beretta basically caters to all facets of the industry. So there's military, law enforcement, competition, and recreation. So recreation is the hunting rifles, etc. In competition is mainly shotgun and pistols. So we are actually here to attend the Pistol Nationals, IPSC, Practical
Okay.
Pistol Nationals, which is being held at Ballistic Navy Range at the moment. And there are 250 shooters. When I told the guys at Beretta that there are 250 shooters, they're like, in Sri Lanka?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there foreigners? I said, no, these are all Sri Lankans. So the shooting fraternity is big, and it's funny enough, it's one of the safest sports. It's so highly regulated. You can't be a cowboy, swinging your gun, doing this, etc. Because you say, drop your gun, you're off. So and even if you go to a World Cup overseas for Olympic qualifiers or etc., you must see how well organized it is. No, that's not security, but it's the regulations and the safety is paramount. At utmost higher standard, you can't do anything wrong.
So Gab, you are basically the authorized dealer of Beretta in Sri Lanka.
Agents, correct.
Agent. So this is something that you've actually. That's why you are here.
Absolutely, yes. So we are here. So we've been working with some of the military bodies as well, like the Army, Navy, and Air Force.
Right.
So Beretta also bought a company called Dynamite Nobel. If you know who Alfred Nobel is, he invented dynamite. So they use ammunition, etc., all the ordnance. They just bought it for 850 million US dollars.
Wow.
Last year. And there's another brand called Holland & Holland that used to make shotguns for the kings in England, to the royal family, so they bought that. They have about 50 different companies. Look, when you're 500 years old, you need to do something right to survive 500 years.
No, you buy everybody. That's
I want
exactly what they're doing.
you.
Yeah, I want you. Yeah.
Correct. No, and I think it's the passion. They call it 500 years, one passion. It's the passion. If you go even to that castle, they have the Beretta Castle in Brescia in Italy, very close to Lake Garda. It's beautiful. It's just absolutely gorgeous. The castle is about 650 years old. So a lot of heritage coming down.
Right.
You know? And I use a gun called the Beretta DT11 Black Edition. It's got a carbon fiber rib. So I asked, how did this come about? Because everything else is metal. Oh no, the guys from Beretta were talking to the guys at Ferrari because they want to buy the next fleet of cars, and they thought, they had some carbon fiber, and they said, let's design something. So there's Ferrari involved in one of the guns as well. So that's the level they go to. You know, and look, it's when you look at competition shooting, that's what we have. Our primary market is the competition market.
Right.
So it's crazy. You know, you can customize a gun to what you want, and purely because of the safety standards, etc. So Beretta wanted to have a presence here. We said, look, yes, let's see. We can't. It's a small market compared to Australia or England or any other place, but
Gavin, what I feel is when it comes to shooting as a sport, right? Now, take for example, even archery, right? In Sri Lanka, people know a little bit of archery, and there is some people doing archery because they practice at BMICH.
Correct.
So anyone going past that way, you always see the targets there and everything, right? So shooting for the longest time, I suppose, was perceived as a sport for the Triforces,
100%.
right?
In Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka. I'm talking about Sri Lanka,
Yes,
right?
correct, yes.
So when it comes to representing the country at a national event, it was always the Triforces,
Absolutely.
right? Nobody knew. I don't know whether anybody at least now knows the regulations, whether you can actually take it up as a sport, whether you're allowed to hold a pistol of that caliber, whether you need to have a license.
Correct.
I think the general knowledge about the sport itself
Absolutely.
is lacking in this country.
Yeah.
So at the moment, there's something called the School Shooting Federation. There are, I think, 5 to 10,000 students shooting a rifle, a pistol, and this is not just
In schools?
In schools, so this is not in Colombo. This is Anuradhapura, Polonnaru, Jaffna, Galle. So it's good.
Right.
You know that people are and to own an air rifle, you don't need a license. You can get a decent air rifle for 50,000 rupees. Like, you can't get anything for 50,000 rupees.
Yeah.
You go to a bar and have to drink 50,000. Right? Right. So there is definitely a lot of engagement in a younger age, and which is good. When you get used to something at a younger age, you know how to do it safe, with a lot of the safety precautions as well, and with a lot of safety is
It's paramount.
It's paramount.
Yeah.
You know, because you don't want cowboys.
Yeah.
That's the last thing you need. So when you going back to what you said, yes, the Triforces at the time, and also it was not available for the general public. But saying that, the president of the National Shooting Federation at the moment is a civilian, right? So the the Olympic aspect of it, all the office bearers, etc., are civilians. Yes, there are people from the forces as well, but it's a civilian sport. If you go to the US, England, or Australia, I'm talking about, even India, you won't find any guy from
The military forces.
Oh.
shooting. At least shotgun. I'm sure there'll be other guys in rifle and pistol because it's cheaper, and most of these guys have inter-regimental stuff, etc. But when it comes to high performance, obviously, the higher you go, that's a huge fallout rate.
Right.
It's like any sport. It's being a champion or getting to the highest level is a very, very lonely place.
Mm.
You know, no one wants to be with you. No one wants to go down that extra mile. If you look at, I'm pretty sure Kumar Sangakkara, Mala Jayawardene, Mutta Amulden, they would have bowled. I'm sure Mutta Amulden would have bowled thousands of balls in the nets by himself without anyone watching. Kumar Sangakkara, I have heard that he had a bowler bowling at him
For hours.
300 deliveries apparently a day,
Yeah.
just to get his shots. So those shots actually don't come naturally. You know, through practice. I had a good coach, Nimal Luke, used to say, practice doesn't make you perfect. Perfect practice makes you perfect.
Mm.
You know, good old sensei. You know?
Right.
You know, it's, and you need to have an aim in what you're doing. So I, as a shooter, I shoot about 25,000 rounds every year.
Wow.
You know, that's a lot of commitment and money, etc. So a lot of people don't realize what it takes. And I've been shooting for about 10 years, and last year, thanks to the Ministry of Sports and the sports body that we had at that time, formulated something called the Olympic High Performance Team to focus on Paris. But that only happened 6 months before the Games.
Right.
Mm.
When every other country had it for 4 years or 8 years, the Olympic program keeps going. You know, you just make sure that everyone, you know, the qualifying criteria for the Games, and you just work towards that. You don't give an athlete 6 months to qualify when you have a 4-year window.
Mm.
So that's what happened. And you know, Shaq, I've been self-funding myself for 10 years, and then it was good. It was a relief because I did, yes. Even a coaching session is $2,000 a day.
Mm.
How can you afford it? Right?
This is a really expensive
Good sport.
sport.
Not just shooting. Any sport. If you want to go to the Olympic level,
Yeah.
at that
you
level
have
to
to.
compete in an international arena. Luckily, we have a lot of money coming from for cricket. You don't feel it, obviously. They must be paying exorbitant amounts for their coaches as well.
Right.
And not one coach. There's so many coaching staff. For example, I train with the Olympic team. I have friends who are Olympic gold medalists, silver medalists, etc. I've been lucky to train with them. When they go, they have a full team manager, masseuse, doctor, everything. And you rock up with a buddy bag and like, here the poor cousin has come. Where do I sit? You know?
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's to make up your mind to go for training. Obviously, you need to have the passion to see through that. Have goals in your mind. How do you improve, etc. That has to come within, and also as a country, as a sports body, as a sports administration, Sri Lanka Sports has to do a lot more. Unfortunately, we have budgetary constraints.
Right.
You know, we were a country we didn't have petrol
Yeah.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, so we have come a long way, and I think Sri Lankans are resilient. Okay, growing up, we didn't know whether when we saw our parents go to work, we didn't know whether they came back.
True.
We didn't know when we were parked at a traffic light, next to a 3-wheeler or a bike was a problem.
Yeah.
So that's where we grew up in. A lot of
Right.
people have forgotten.
Yeah.
You know, Sri Lanka went from war to peace overnight, and after that, not one shot has been fired. So I think Sri Lankans are resilient. We have the passion. It's just that we need the exposure. We need vision from leaders, whoever it is, so that maybe sport, maybe anything, we have to take Sri Lanka to the next level.
So so basically, before we let you go, Gavin, Beretta, you bought Beretta to Sri Lanka.
Correct.
What is Beretta's role going to be in Sri Lanka?
So Beretta's role going to be in Sri Lanka is we'll have a big presence here.
Okay.
In every category. Primarily at this stage will be competition shooting. So pistol and shotgun, because there's a big market for it. And Beretta, when you buy a shotgun, you have lifetime warranty, lifetime free servicing.
Oh.
Something happens, you go, they sort it out.
Wow.
So unfortunately, Sri Lanka is a bit far from Beretta, but we have gunsmiths in the country, in Australia. We'll fly them in. Like And if in case there are 100 Berettas, we just say bring it in, we just see what's wrong with it, change all the spare parts, etc. Bang, you have almost a new gun, and nothing happens to it. It's. And for the military today, when we met up with some people, they said we need something that will work for a long time, and we need after sales.
Right.
So we come with all of that. Beretta has a lot of standards. So for an example, we have a pistol which we are, like a 9mm pistol, which we are working with some of the law enforcement agencies here. A couple of years ago, the Indian Army bought 35,000 units of it. Right, that says something.
Yeah.
So there was a model called the Beretta 92 FS. It was the official issue to the U.S. Marines and the U.S. Army, and they said you have to manufacture it in the U.S. So they built a factory there. For the U.S. Army to buy, and some of these guns, the testing period is 4 to 5 years before they actually buy that gun. So it's a robust testing procedure. They look at everything, because look, in law enforcement, we can always say, you know what, it's that cop or that guy is carrying a gun. But when the need arises and when they have to use it, it has to be reliable.
Yeah.
There are so many Turkish guns. They say, it looks like something from Terminator. I said, look, mate, good luck. It has 10 shots, etc. I said, well done. Buy yourself a good pair of running shoes. When you shoot your first shot and the gun jams, throw it and run.
I had a very frightening thought just now. But now he was talking so much about maintenance and repairs and servicing. I wonder why, when the military here, when they aim the legs, it goes and knocks on the head.
Now,
No, that is not what we're talking about here. Right?
that went south very fast.
Very fast, very fast.
That
Right?
has to be edited.
Like most things on this show.
Most things on this show, yeah.
But
No, look, it's everything that is. So, if in case any military agency in Sri Lanka wants to buy a consignment, let's say 100 guns or whatever, for the commandos or whoever, it's not in stock. Beretta has sold its capacity 18 months ahead,
oh wow.
right?
So that's an 18 months waiting list.
Minimum.
A
Minimum.
minimum.
But if in case it's a big contract, obviously they will open a new line, etc. But again, 6 months minimum.
Right.
And that product that they manufacture will be actually for the Sri Lankan market. They will look at the humidity level, they look at all of that, and then say, yeah, that's for Beretta, that's from Beretta, and the serial number you can trace it back when it was made, who was the gunsmith, etc. So that something goes wrong, they know who was responsible to it.
Right.
So
Right.
that's the quality level it goes to, even though it's military hardware.
Right.
So you can imagine the precision and everything that goes into competition shotguns, So that's what it is. No, but we are definitely here to stay. And unfortunately, when I look at some of the prices in Sri Lanka, some of these shops, some of these dealers have been ripping the Sri Lankan public off, big time, especially air rifles. So we will bring the scale Beretta has and its expertise to give a very cost-effective product for the Sri Lankan market, because we want people to engage in responsible gun ownership, responsible use of firearms, and especially young kids, because yes, LA 2028 we have shooting, and most of Brisbane we'll have shooting as well. So we need to get the next generation
Right.
prepared, encourage them to come and shoot. It's an Olympic sport.
Yeah.
Rugby is just in the Olympics, or cricket is just in the
Cricket
Olympics.
is just in the
There are
Olympics. Yeah.
so many other sports that are waiting to get into the Olympics. So we need to encourage this. Look, it doesn't have to be the same discipline, but as a marksman, I would like to see a lot of participation in Sri Lanka. And this year, or last Olympics, we didn't have anyone in shooting, purely because the qualification system is becoming tougher and tougher and tougher. So when you go for a World Cup, you have shooters, we have about 250, 300 shooters. Only 28 to 32 are allowed in the Olympics.
Wow.
So when I went to Qatar last year for the final Olympic qualifier, there was one quota for the Olympics. So one shooter was going to qualify. There were 185 shooters. So we are just going there, hoping for the best, not knowing who's going to win. So that's how competitive it is, and so many times, luckily Australia from anywhere in the world is about 14 hours. When you have a bad day, you just cry. By the time you get down in the plane, you're like, I'm all right now. You have that feeling, but that's what it is when it comes to the high level competition. You have to motivate yourself. There's no one beside you. It's an individual sport, not a team sport. Everything happens. There's no one else to blame but you. But you just pick yourself and go on again. So I'm 44 years now. I have my eyes. I wear glasses to read now. By the way.
Oh,
to read. So
that's too bad.
Thanks. I should have a very very strong orange juice. But I think I have about another 3-4 years left in shooting competitive, and then I will obviously call it a day, and most probably go back into rugby in coaching.
Okay.
So that's always been my passion. I've always, shooting and rugby have been my two passions competitively. So I'll most probably go into coaching because I was heading rugby at CR before I left.
Yep.
And people have said, why don't you get involved in it? Look, the game has changed so much for the last 15 years and I have not been following it. You can be a good rugby player. Some guys say, I played in the 70s. And they're dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Things have changed so much. You can't.
The world has changed so much.
Exactly.
Crazy.
I have 2 kids. One is 5, one is 3. I met someone who's got a kid who's 20 years old. I said, when he asked me how old my kids are, I said they're 3 and 5. First question he asked, do they listen to you? I said, no chance. No one listens to us anymore.
Things have changed.
Correct.
Gav, thank you so much for coming in.
Pleasure being here. Thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. We want to wish you all the very best. And of course, bringing Beretta, a massive company like that, into Sri Lanka, it's actually, as a whole, it's going to lift the image of Sri Lanka also.
Correct. Absolutely. And look, if anyone who wants to look at Beretta or understand what it is, just go to YouTube and type Beretta. You'll have lots of YouTube videos about their success, their succession as a company. Harvard Business School is doing studies on it. Oxford is doing studies on it. So obviously they've done something right.
Right. And for a long time.
As a brand, as a company, yes.
Yeah.
So clearly they have evolved with the times and they will obviously keep evolving in the future as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. That's our guest edition on GNSL for this week. Gavin Jayasekara, and of course talking about world-renowned Beretta. And of course, it's not just basically as far as ammunition and guns are concerned. It's actually a lifestyle brand like Gavin was talking about. Gav, thank you so much. All the best. And let's catch up soon.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Going to take a quick break and we shall be back right after this.